The news hit them like a wave, stunning, overwhelming, but filled with indescribable joy. Amy and Connor were going to be parents to twins. What had begun as a day of fear and dread transformed into one of the most memorable and joyful moments of their lives. Standing there in the hospital room, flooded with relief, they laughed and cried, holding each other tightly. The uncertainty of the morning gave way to awe and gratitude. Their love, once shared between two, now extended to two tiny hearts growing inside Amy. As the weeks passed, anticipation bloomed. The couple returned home and began preparing not just a nursery, but a future that suddenly seemed twice as bright. Every sonogram, every tiny heartbeat amplified their excitement. At their 20-week scan, they found out they were expecting twin girls, two daughters who would not only carry their parents' love but share a unique, unbreakable bond from the very beginning. They imagined the girls growing up side by side, finishing each other's sentences, holding hands through life's adventures, and leaning on one another in the way only twins can. But life, in all its beauty, also carries heartbreak. At just 24 weeks, without warning, Amy's water broke. The peace they had settled into shattered in an instant. They rushed to the hospital once again, hoping, praying, that the babies would stay safe just a little while longer. Thankfully, Amy didn't go into labor right away. Doctors acted quickly, administering medications to delay delivery and protect the baby's fragile development. Every hour, every day mattered now. Amy was put on strict hospital bed rest. And with each passing moment, hope held steady. During their stay, they learned something remarkable. One of the twins, later named Esme, was sharing her amniotic sac with her sister. Even before birth, the girls were connected, supporting each other in their tiny world. They're already taking care of each other, Amy whispered, tears shining in her eyes. The discovery filled her with pride. And for the first time in days, she allowed herself to dream again. But sometimes, the heart's deepest dreams never get the chance to unfold. Some moments are destined to live only in our imagination. At 26 weeks, the inevitable arrived. Amy went into labor. She was rushed into surgery for an emergency C-section. The operating room filled with urgency, prayers, and hope. A few moments later, the girls made their entrance into the world, tiny, beautiful, and incredibly brave. Esme weighed 2 pounds and 2 ounces. Charlotte, an even 2 pounds. Though small and fragile, they were perfect. But their early arrival meant they needed immediate medical care. The girls were whisked away to the neonatal intensive care unit and placed in separate incubators. The fight for survival had begun. At first, Esme seemed stronger. Charlotte struggled with the basics: breathing, feeding, stabilizing. Doctors did everything they could. And slowly, she began to respond. But at the 6-week mark, their fortunes reversed. Esme developed a dangerous infection. Fluid began to build in her tiny heart and brain. And despite every intervention, her condition worsened. Doctors delivered a grim update: Esme was in critical condition, and they couldn't guarantee she would survive. Amy and Connor were told to go home and prepare themselves for the worst. But they weren't ready to let go. They clung to hope, believing that Esme would turn a corner. Back at home, they filled the nursery with love and faith, refusing to let darkness swallow their dreams. Then came the phone call that shattered everything. Amy was out walking the dogs when the hospital rang. Her stomach dropped. The hospital never called unless something was wrong. She knew. Even before she answered. She knew. The words "Esme is dying" echoed inside her, louder with every step. She collapsed in the middle of the field, grief crushing her before the news was even confirmed. Connor found her, revived her, and together they rushed to the hospital, hearts racing, dreading what awaited them. There, doctors gave them the final, heartbreaking truth. Esme's brain had been severely damaged. Even if she survived, her life would be filled with unrelenting suffering. No parent should ever face such a choice, but Amy and Connor had to. They made the agonizing decision to let their daughter go. But Amy had one last wish. For her daughters to meet properly. She asked the nurses to place both babies on her chest. Skin to skin. Heart to heart. And in that quiet, sacred moment, Charlotte reached out and wrapped her tiny arm around her sister. It was a gesture that needed no words. A moment that said, "Goodbye," that whispered love, that held an eternity of sisterhood in a single touch. That night, before life support was removed, Amy sat beside Esme and wrote her a final letter. In that letter were memories, promises, and a mother's deepest love. She didn't write with sorrow, she wrote with courage. I wanted her to know she was loved, that she was brave, that she was mine. Amy later said. The next morning, doctors turned off the machines. Esme passed peacefully, wrapped in love. Connor described it as a decision no parent should ever have to make. But they did it for Esme, because she deserved more than a life filled with pain. I tried not to cry, Amy said, her voice breaking but steady. I wanted her to feel strength, to feel joy as she left. I wanted her to know that her mom was strong and that it was okay to go. That night, as they stepped out into the quiet sky, a shooting star streaked above them. She was saying, "Goodbye," Amy whispered. Or maybe she was saying, "I'm okay." 2 weeks later, Esme was laid to rest in Charlotte's christening outfit. A final, beautiful connection between the sisters. Though Charlotte is still too young to understand. One day, Amy and Connor will tell her the story of her courageous sister, the twin who fought with all her might and left behind a legacy of love. And with time, perhaps their pain will soften, leaving behind the warmth of memories and the deep comfort of knowing that Esme, though gone, will always be part of them. Amy and Connor were overwhelmed with relief, with shock, and most of all, with joy. Right there in the hospital, they held each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces, and promised to love their unborn daughters with every ounce of their being. They returned home beaming, already imagining a future filled with the giggles of 2 little girls. At the 20-week scan, their dream was confirmed. Twin girls were on the way. But their joy was about to be tested once again. At just 24 weeks, Amy's water broke suddenly. The day unraveled in a panic. They rushed back to the hospital, fearing the worst. Thankfully, labor didn't start right away. With the help of doctors and a lot of hope, They managed to delay delivery for 2 critical weeks. During this time, they learned something extraordinary. One twin, later named Esme, was sharing her amniotic sac with her sister. It was a rare and remarkable discovery that left Amy in awe. It felt like the girls were already protecting each other, she said, tears in her eyes. Amy began to dream of the bond her daughters would share, a bond forged even before birth. She imagined them growing up hand in hand, inseparable, facing the world together. But sometimes, dreams remain dreams, fragile as glass, waiting for the faintest crack. And this is where their story takes a turn so painful. It's hard to put into words. At just 26 weeks, Amy unexpectedly went into labor. The urgency of the situation left no time to waste. She was rushed into surgery for an emergency cesarean section. Moments later, 2 tiny miracles entered the world. The girls, delicate and fragile, looked like little angels sent from heaven. Esme was born weighing 2 pounds and 2 ounces, while her sister Charlotte weighed exactly 2 pounds. Though their arrival was premature, their presence filled the room with overwhelming love and hope. But the reality of their early birth soon set in. The newborns were immediately transferred to the neonatal intensive care unit, NICU, where they were placed in separate incubators for specialized care. Esme, surprisingly, showed strength in those first critical days. Charlotte, however, was struggling. Her tiny body fought to respond to treatment, and doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize her. Then, something shifted. By the 6th week, it was as if the twins had swapped places. Charlotte began to gain strength, showing signs of resilience and growth. Esme, on the other hand, began to decline. She developed a severe infection, and fluid began accumulating dangerously in both her heart and her brain. The doctors delivered the heartbreaking news. Esme was in critical condition. They couldn't promise recovery. All Amy and Connor could do was return home and pray. Despite the devastating prognosis, Amy and Connor refused to give in to despair. They pushed away their fears, choosing instead to hold on to hope. They began preparing their home to welcome their daughters, never letting go of the belief that Esme would pull through. But then came the call. Amy was out walking the dogs when her phone rang. The hospital never called unless there was an emergency. Her heart dropped. A cold wave of dread washed over her. Deep down, she already knew. The words "Esme is dying" echoed in her mind with terrifying clarity. The shock was too much. Right there in the field, Amy collapsed. Connor rushed to her side, revived her, and they sped to the hospital. Barely speaking, their worst fears weighing down every breath. And indeed, their fears were confirmed. Esme had suffered severe brain damage. The doctors gently told them that she would never experience a meaningful quality of life. Her short time on Earth had been filled with struggle, and continuing life support would only prolong her suffering. Amy and Connor were devastated. But after agonizing reflection, they made the most painful decision a parent could ever face. They would let their daughter go. But Amy had one final request. Before saying goodbye, she wanted her daughters to have a chance, no matter how brief, to be together. She asked the nurses to place both babies on her chest. Skin to skin, hearts beating close. In that quiet, Sacred moment. Amy held her girls and felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in weeks. Her world, though cracked and trembling, felt whole again. Then something beautiful and inexplicable happened. As if sensing what was about to happen, little Charlotte reached out and gently wrapped her arm around her sister. It was a moment of pure love, a goodbye, a comfort, and a bond that even death could not break. Everyone in the room stood still, deeply moved. It was as if Charlotte, too, was letting her sister go. The night before life support was removed, Amy sat beside Esme's bed and poured her heart onto paper. She wrote a loving, handwritten letter of farewell filled with memories, dreams, and all the motherly love she had to give. I wanted her to know how loved she was, and how brave she had been, Amy said. The next morning, surrounded by love, the doctors turned off the machines. Connor described it as utterly heartbreaking. A choice no parent should ever have to make. But they did it for their daughter, so that her tiny, beautiful life would not be marked only by suffering. I tried not to cry, Amy recalled. I wanted her to be surrounded by happiness, by strength. I wanted her to remember that her mom was strong, and that she didn't need to be afraid of where she was going. That night, as Amy and Connor returned home, they looked up and saw a shooting star streak across the sky. In their hearts, they believed it was Esme, free, at peace, and sending them a sign. She was letting us know she was okay, Amy whispered. That she was happy and still with us. It made us believe we had done the right thing. It was beautiful. 2 weeks later, they laid Esme to rest, dressing her in Charlotte's christening gown, a final, touching connection between the two sisters. Charlotte is too young to understand what happened, but Amy and Connor plan to one day tell her about the brave, beautiful sister she once held in her arms. Esme's story will live on, in memories, in whispers, in every heartbeat of the family she left behind. And hopefully, with time, the pain will ease, and the ache of loss will be replaced with peace, love, and pride in the tiny warrior who fought until her last breath.